Hello, I want to welcome you once again this week to Think on These Things. My name's Gabriel Etzel, and we are continuing in our study through Scripture, and our Scripture reading plan both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. This week we start into the book of Hebrews. We're getting closer to the end of the New Testament and the Old Testament, really, as we continue to work through Scripture. I wanted to take a few moments, really, to talk about some of the themes in Hebrews, but particularly as the book of Hebrews starts talking about the significance of Jesus. It's a question I think we all need to address, and that is, who is Jesus? What is our understanding of him? How does Scripture present him? And then what is the significance of who he is? And so let me read verses 1 through 4 here in Hebrews chapter 1. The book starts by saying, "Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom he also created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs." What a great introduction to this book. It almost sounds like a sermon introduction. Some scholars actually believe maybe this is kind of a collection of sermons or a summary of teachings that would have presented there in the early church. But the significance of who Jesus is, as I read these first few verses, it reminds me of the way in which Jesus is presented in other Gospels. For instance, the Gospel of John is Jesus as the Creator. Colossians chapter 1, 15 through 20 talks about who is Jesus and the significance of Jesus being the image of the invisible God, the Creator and Sustainer. And so you see here the author of Hebrews brings together, it seems, maybe some other passages of Scripture. I want to challenge us, or at least I am challenged as I read this, to then say, if Jesus really is, verse 3, the radiance of the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature, meaning he is the same as God the Father, the same nature that God the Father has, then that should change our view of Jesus from maybe being just a prophet or just a man to Jesus being God. That's the way Jesus is presented in the rest of Scripture. I already mentioned John chapter 1 and Jesus as the Creator. The Word was with God and the Word was God. That's a theme that we see in other places in Scripture. So it changes our perspective. Well, then as you read through the book of Hebrews, you'll see that the author presents Jesus as being superior to all these other things. So even in these verses, superior to the prophets. God spoke through the prophets in the past. He's speaking through Jesus now as superior to. Jesus is superior to the angels. We see that in verse 4. We see that later in the book as well, that Jesus is far superior to any other being ever. Right? Angels are created. Jesus is not created. He is superior. We see later on in the book, chapter 3, Jesus is superior to Moses. You say, you got to understand in the Jewish mindset, Moses is the one who brought the law. Moses is the great deliverer. He brought the Israelites out of the Exodus, right? Out of the captivity to Egypt. And yet Jesus is superior to him. And then getting into chapters 4 and beyond, we talk about Jesus as the great high priest. And so Jesus is superior even to Aaron. Aaron, who was the first high priest, that person who stood in intercessory role between man and God, interceding on their behalf. We see Jesus is far superior to him as well. So as you read through the book of Hebrews, be looking for those themes of the explanation of who Jesus is and then the significance of who he is as a result of his very nature that is established here in an introduction to the book. I want to thank you for joining us again this week. If you want more information about the School of Divinity, please visit our website, liberty.edu/divinity. You can find more about our programs, the courses that we have to offer, some of the events that we have, and also you can get your copy of the Bible reading plan there from the website.